Good morning, good morning, good morning, good morning, good morning, good morning. Hopefully you guys are doing okay. Good. People logging in. Good, good, good. Awesome. All right. Okay, so as we go live here, give me a couple minutes. I'm going to get some stuff to pop up so I can keep things together here. Good morning. Good morning. Hey, and if you have any questions, go ahead and ask right there in the comments if you want. Good morning, guys. Good morning. I'm getting some notes pulled up here just real quick. Good. We got some good numbers. Good. New unit this morning, guys. New unit. Give me a minute here. I'm going to pull these notes up and then we'll go right into it. Like I said, new unit this week, and everything's published. Gonna get started here just briefly, just kind of giving the last minute stragglers a little bit more time to log in, but just a lot more information. And I'm probably at some point going to give an extra assignment. I don't know exactly where yet. I'll probably do it sometime next week, and I'll let you know. It'll be something like to review the material and come up with one question that you send me, and just kind of facilitate a discussion, right? At least a little bit more active learning on your part, not so much passive learning, which is, you have to create when we're doing an online deal. In a classroom, it's much more easier. People can raise their hand and so on and so forth. I mean, I'm sure you guys understand that. The material is about 5 weeks long, was kind of putting the last minute portions of it together last night. We might go 6 weeks. I might just add a week, just because I think this is kind of like the most important material. And, the bottom line is this is probably, for most people in the class, the more interesting part of the semester. So a 6 week might be added. So let's just go right into it. If you open up Canvas, hopefully you're doing that every time we're logging in. I have a split screen, my YouTube on one side and my Canvas on the other. If you go to the page that says "Run Less, Eat More," that's kind of how we start off, and this is probably, to me, let me put it this way: there's no one diet for everyone. There's too much biodiversity, and that's why I'm like anti-diet. Diets in the traditional form, or the traditional definition of a diet, more likely than not, is bound for failure for a number of reasons. But the main a lot of them, they're unsustainable. They demand too much. They demand too much of your attention, and it just gets overbearing and tiring. But more significantly, they just don't work. I mean, there are some people that should not eat meat. There are some people that can be a vegan or a vegetarian and feel just fine. Many don't. There are some people that can tolerate high amounts of carbohydrate, high amounts of sugar, and they maintain a healthy body weight and a healthy cardiovascular system. Most people don't. So in general, what I try to do is like just make some general like guidelines for people to follow, to kind of just start nominally increasing their health, nominally getting in better shape. But more importantly, like, what's sustainable? Like, how are we able to do something now and over the course of your life to where you maintain a healthy weight? That's the ultimate goal. The overconsumption of calories is what makes health tricky in America. It's a issue of overconsumption, not underconsumption. So how do we fine tune it? But also there's a lot of misinformation around fitness in general. Training a lot of cardio, being in a fat loss zone cardiovascularly, they're myths. A lot of them are myths for a lot of people. As a matter of fact, I know a lot of people who do a lot of cardio-based work and they never lose weight. They never lose fat. And we're going to talk about that right now. Okay, so my overall umbrella for just general life fitness would be to run less and eat more. And I know that sounds counterproductive. You're probably like, are you sure it's not run more and eat less? No, for most people, it's probably run less and eat more. And let me explain. First and foremost, there's two types of muscle fiber in the body. There's type 1 and there's type 2. Type 1 muscle fiber, and this isn't like, well, your type 1's over here and your type 2 is over here. This is within every muscle you have, there are fibers, and some of these fibers are type 1 fibers. Some of these fibers are type 2 fibers, and they're all mixed in together. And depending on that ratio, it depends on your fitness level. Not only that, the size of those muscle fibers and the resiliency of those muscle fibers are indicative of your strength. So type 1 muscle fibers are the type of muscle fibers that allow us to do something for long periods of time. So typically what this means, this is in the presence of oxygen. This means this is aerobic activity like jogging, swimming, an elliptical, cardio classes, things of that nature. Those are primarily focusing on using your type 1 muscle fiber, your aerobic exercise, your aerobic capacity. Okay. So a lot of times this is referred to as tension over time. In other words, your muscles are being worked for long periods of time, but typically at a very low threshold compared to what you're able to do at your max. Does that make sense? In other words, aerobic work is jogging at 50 to 60% of your aerobic capacity. Whereas if you were to sprint, you would get to the very high end of your aerobic capacity. You'd be sucking air, trying to get oxygen to your muscles, right? So that's type 1 exercise, the jogging, the water aerobics, swimming, things of that nature. Type 2 muscle fiber is just the opposite. Type 2 muscle fiber is anaerobic. In other words, it's all the activity and the resistance movement that is done not in the presence of oxygen. In other words, you're an outfielder and, we're watching playoff baseball right now. At least some of you probably are. An outfielder gets a ball hit over his head. He turns, he sprints 15 yards, reaches up, catches the ball, takes it, boom, throws it in the outfield. That whole thing took 8 seconds, 10 seconds. So highly explosive, at his max. He's running as fast as he can. He's throwing as hard as he can. He's turning his body. He's rotating as hard as he can. That is dependent upon your type 2 muscle fiber, not your type 1. So those short bursts of power, those explosive movements, weightlifting, right? Throwing a baseball 90 miles an hour, throwing a football 60, 70 yards, kicking a football through the uprights at 50, 60 yards. Those are examples of your type 2 muscle fibers. Those are examples of speed and power. Those are done not in the presence of oxygen, therefore they are anaerobic, right? So we have our type 1, our cardio, think cross-country runner. Then we have our type 2, anaerobic, think baseball player, think football player, think along the lines of more power and performance sports, okay? Now, as you're thinking along those lines, just ask yourself, what does a cross-country runner look like, right? And this isn't a diss, but typically they're very thin and they're not necessarily defined muscularly. In other words, yeah, they're thin and obviously they're in shape. You see the Rigetti cross-country team in their purple shorts running down Clark or Bradley or whatever it is, obviously before the coronavirus situation. You see them running down and their arms are this big around. Whereas you go watch the baseball team play or the football team play, you're going to see guys that are just bigger. They just carry more weight. Those represent two different training modalities, right? And the idea is to run less. Now, the idea here is you're not training for cross country. Most of you aren't. Okay. So the idea is, how do we promote lifelong fitness and longevity? Right. So my argument isn't to run more, even though that's how most people would begin their fitness life. They would begin by jogging. Right. My whole thing is to diminish that. In other words, running and cardio work should only be about 8 to 10% of your total training. And many people go to the gym and it's 50, 60% of their total training. And there's a couple reasons why I say that. First and foremost, too much training, type 1 muscle fiber, so too much aerobic activity ultimately does a couple of things that really aren't good for lifelong fitness. I mean, they're just not, right? The first one being that the more you train your type 1 muscle fiber, the more type 2 muscle fiber you'll end up losing. Okay, so what do I mean by that? The more you run, the weaker you get. Yes, weaker. Ask Alex Rodriguez. Just look at the history of Alex Rodriguez's baseball career. He, at the time of him graduating from high school and going into the pros, he was the highest prospect in the country. When he ended up signing with Texas, he signed the largest contract in the history of baseball, for sure, and maybe even in the history of sports. And at that time, he felt the pressure. He knew he had to perform, so he started running every single day. And if you go back and look at his stats when he was at Texas, and this is when everyone started to hate him. If you don't know that, a lot of people don't like Alex Rodriguez. They started to not like him because his numbers went down. In other words, people started to say, oh, this guy, he's cruising. You know, people started to doubt his ability. Finally, his numbers got so low that he hired a professional trainer. And the trainer said, okay, well, what are you doing? He goes, dude, I'm busting my butt. I'm running every day. And the trainer's like, whoa, 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 whoa. Why would you run every day? Alex Rodriguez is running like 3 to 5 miles every single day. I mean, hard work, but dumb work, right? Dumb work. So immediately the trainer said, we're done with that. If you want to run, we can figure some stuff out, but it's going to be more calisthenic type, high knees, med ball type stuff. It's not going to be that you're just sitting and jogging for an hour to 2 hours a day. No way. Right. And that's because the trainer knew that the more he kept training that type 1 muscle fiber, the more type 2 muscle fiber started to decrease. In other words, he gets weaker. He can't hit the ball out of the park as easily. He has to now attempt to swing as hard as he can every single time. And that, if you talk to anyone who knows anything about baseball, you're swinging hard, but it's a controlled aggression. It is not an out of control situation, right? The other thing is, a lot of this has to do with the way we eat, but when you run for long periods of time, your body is actually going to want to store fat. And it's evident by, look at swimmers. I mean, again, not a diss, but a lot of swimmers, they're not muscularly defined. There's a layer of fat on their body. This is two-part. Number one, fat helps insulate your organs. And, you know, obviously hitting the pool at 5 o'clock in the morning, it's a little bit chilly. So there's just a little bit of a natural defense for the body there. But the other thing is, the body knows that it's going to be demanding a lot of energy at various times during the day. And what your body does is it stores fat. Why? Because fat's the most calorically dense. Okay. So when you consume fat, and I'll type this in here so you guys can remember it. Fat will give you 9 calories per gram. Protein will give you 4 calories per gram. And carbohydrate, will give you 4 calories per gram. Okay, so of the 3 macronutrients, fat, protein, and carbohydrate and protein are the least calorically dense. In other words, fat provides the most energy. Okay, so this is why you see a lot of people who do a lot of cardio work, they don't end up necessarily losing a lot of weight or necessarily gaining a lot of definition. We don't see that, right? You just don't see that. Your body is going to go into a little bit of defense mode. It's going to want to create and store that fat for usage down the road. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about why type 2 is better. Not necessarily why type 1 is inferior, but why type 2 is superior in order for you to just maintain good weight, to stay strong, to have longevity in life. Okay, so type 2, again, it's ultimately it's strength. Type 1 is endurance. Type 2 is strength. Okay, so let me put it this way. If I were to take you all over to Hancock right now and put you in the gym and had you put your body weight on the squat rack and made you do 4 sets of 10, how would you feel? Right? The next day, you would most likely be sore. Many of you would be getting off the toilet. Oh, goddamn, Griego. Like you'd be dying. Your legs would be demolished. Why? Why are your legs demolished? Right? I'll tell you why. Lactic acid. Okay, so what happens is we have eccentric and concentric movement. In other words, as I'm like if I'm doing curls, I have an eccentric movement taking place in my bicep, and then I have a concentric movement taking place in my bicep. In other words, an elongating and a shortening of the muscles. As that's happening and you put pressure up against those muscle fibers, they actually begin to tear, right? There's micro tears that happen as those muscles are working across or through that, what we call range of motion, right? Through that range of motion. There's muscle damage taking place. Your body actually produces sugar to help replenish the muscles and to help start the recovery process. So what happens is when you're out of shape, that lactic acid is going to get into that bicep, right? It's going to backfill the areas that are torn with sugar. That sugar crystallizes, it gets hard, and now you have that sore, painful feeling, almost like someone's stabbing you in the muscles, right? So what does that represent? That represents caloric burn, right? In other words, lactic acid is the heavy feeling. Yeah, the feeling of like you're just sore, you're tight, it burns, it doesn't feel good. Yeah, it can be the heavy feeling. Yes. So what happens is you stressed your muscles to the point where they're damaged, right? They're damaged. They're stressed. So now what do you think your body has to do in order for you to feel better, right? It has to heal itself. What do you think your body's doing when it heals itself, right? It's burning calories. In other words, if you run every day for a mile, ultimately you're going to get used to that mile. So yeah, let's say it starts out at 13 minutes a mile and you get it down to 10. Good job. There's a fitness component to that, but you stay at that 10-minute mile for too long. At the end of that 10 minutes, your ability to burn calories at an elevated level stops. It stops. In other words, what we call a metabolic disturbance. Ooh, I didn't spell that right. Okay. So your and I didn't even spell metabolic. Metabolic. Okay, there we go. And I can't even space it right. Your metabolic disturbance stops. Whereas when you lift, bench, pull downs, or better yet, pull ups, squats, lunges, curls, your body now throughout the course of the day has to repair itself. So ultimately, when you train type 2 muscle fiber, you are keeping a longer, higher, elevated metabolic disturbance during the day. And that's what you want. You want metabolic disturbance. You want your heart rate elevated. In other words, your metabolism is going to increase over the course of the day because your body needs to repair. As a result, you're going to start eating more, right? You're going to eat more. Why? Because your muscle's saying, hey, you're doing this to me. I need to grow. I need to grow, right? So that's the point. Fitness in general isn't about how long you can run, right? It's about gaining lean muscle mass. Fat and muscle don't like to hang out with each other, right? So instead of trying to lose weight, which ultimately, if you run too much, you'll lose muscle, what you should be thinking is just change it in your head. Instead of telling myself, I want to lose weight, tell yourself, how do I gain lean muscle mass? The only way to gain lean muscle mass is through resistance workout or through weight training. It's not through jogging. Now, I'm not saying jogging's not good. I jog 3-4 days a week, but it's never more than a mile. I mean, occasionally I'll go out on a long jog because that's all I'm going to do that day. And why not? Why not extend it a little bit? It's all good, not a big deal. But the last thing I'm going to do, if I'm looking in the mirror with my shirt off and I don't like what I see, the last thing I'm going to do is go try to run that away. You're way better off, even if it's just on your knees, trying to do 20, 30 push-ups a day than you are going out and trying to jog a mile. Okay, for most people, this is the situation. Ultimately, what happens when you train your type 2 muscle fiber is you're accelerating fat burn. You're accelerating fat burn. The reason being is, and you look at these cardio machines, it says fat burning zone. That's all good and great. But the bottom line is, physiologically, most of your fat burn is done at rest. It's not done during activity. There's too much going on for your body to burn fat. What it's doing is it's burning sugar. Okay. Now, obviously, you might start to tap into some fat stores, but not to the level of when you take your shirt off at the beach, you're going to feel good. You're not going to get it. You're not going to get that look from running. You're not going to get that look from being on the treadmill for half an hour. Oh, I'm going to put in some extra work. And then you go to the elliptical for an extra 20 minutes. It doesn't happen that way. In order to accelerate that fat loss, you need to take your muscles through their range of motion in a resistance way. Push-ups, pull-ups, lunges, hands behind your head, just prisoner squats, curls, shoulder press. Those are the activities that you need to be doing. Med balls across the body. That's the type of activity that needs to take place. So this unit hinges upon you, again, shifting your traditional way of thinking. Getting lifelong fitness is not about losing. It's about gaining. It's not about elimination. It's not about not eating carbs, not eating fat, not eating this. It's actually about gaining. It's actually about doing more. It's not about anything less, right? So more thinking about how do I gain lean muscle mass, more resistance training. Pick up the amount of food that you're eating, right? I mean, I know, again, I said at the top of the class that overconsumption of calories is a major issue in the United States. Right. But how we are consuming those calories is the issue, not necessarily the calories themselves. So what do I mean by that? So let's say the average diet, and I'm gonna write this out so you can see it. So let's say the average diet is roughly, I don't know if you can see that, probably not, roughly 2,000 calories, okay? So this is how you should hit those 2,000 calories. It's not wake up and drink a sugar coffee and not eat till lunch and then have a 1,500 calorie lunch and then get tired at 2 o'clock. If you're tired at 2 o'clock every day, there's something wrong. You're eating wrong. And I'm not saying necessarily your food choices are wrong, but how you're eating is wrong. So let me use this for an example. I had a buddy that years ago was overweight, a guy I coached baseball with. He was about 90 pounds overweight. Went to the doctor. The doctor, hey, dude, your numbers are bad. Your numbers are bad. High cholesterol, high blood pressure. This is not good. You're getting into your 40s and 50s, and you need to lose some weight. Here's what you're going to do. And he put him on what he calls a metafast diet, right? So if you go to the doctor, they're most likely going to tell you this is the diet we want you on. But it's not really a diet. All it is you're taking those 2,000 calories and you're going to diminish them a little bit. Obviously, a lot of people need to undereat, at least for a while, to lose a little weight and start to change their body. So I think they took down his caloric intake by 200-300 calories. So instead of roughly 2,500 calories for men, they had him probably around 2,000. I'd have to ask him, but probably around 2,000. So there's a small caloric downtick. Most of that comes from carbohydrate. In other words, stop eating so many cereals and breads and juices and stuff like that. Eliminate that kind of stuff. And those calories you stop eating bread every morning or cereal every morning and juice every morning or a Frappuccino every day, and those calories will immediately peel off. You'll immediately start to lose weight because you're just that caloric. There's so many calories in that if you eliminate those things, you're automatically going to be caloric deficient. And then what he said was, I want you eating every 2 to 3 hours, right? So what did he have to do? So in an 8-hour day, a 10-hour day, if he's going to eat every 2 to 3 hours, what's going to happen is he's going to end up eating 5 times, right? So you divide 5 into 2,000, he's going to have 5 400-calorie meals. Right? 5 400-calorie meals. What does this do? What does this do? Right? Gets the metabolism up and steadies it out. That's all it does. That tired feeling, is because you ate a sugar heavy meal and now your body's crashing. And while your body's crashing, your body's storing fat. Why? Because it knows that metabolism is going to keep going down and it needs the energy, right? So if you're carrying around extra body fat, it's most likely because you're not eating enough. You're not eating in the proper way to let the food work, let your body know that it can get rid of some of the fat because it's not going to need it. Why? Because you're going to feed it again soon enough. So waking up and skipping breakfast, having a big sugar lunch, a big sandwich on a big roll, chips and a soda or a Gatorade, and then you get tired at 2 o'clock, and then you have a coffee and you kind of figure it out, and then you come home and mom has, a big plate of spaghetti or some tortillas and asada for dinner, beans and rice, another big carb tick. And then what happens at night is that sugar level goes up and then everyone sits down. Everyone sits down and watches Netflix, right? You're killing yourself. You're absolutely killing yourself, right? So the 3 things I want you to take away are 4 things I want you to take away from the day. That there's a type 1 and there's a type 2 muscle fiber. Training type 2 is superior. It's superior because the bottom line is, let me do this, type 2, superior. It's superior, I can't spell, sorry. It's superior because fat and muscle don't hang out. In other words, you've got to gain muscle. That's the bottom line. You want to gain lean muscle mass. You want your body to go into fatigue. You want to put pressure on your muscular skeletal system. And just, does anyone have a grandma or a grandpa that fell and broke their arm or fell and broke their hip? If your grandmother or grandfather are old enough and they fall and break their hip, a lot of them die. They die. And that falling, the inability to stop yourself has nothing to do with your aerobic capacity and has everything to do with balance and strength. It has everything to do with range of motion. It has absolutely nothing to do with your cardiovascular endurance. As you get older, you lose muscle. You need to put muscle on now. You need to constantly strain your musculoskeletal system in order for you to have strength into your senior years. That's the bottom line. We get an increased metabolic disturbance. We promote muscle growth. We promote fat burn. Not only that, we promote a range of motion. Right? Newsflash. Prostate cancer is really high in men. Prostate cancer is linked to a lack of blood flow, right? Do we know what the prostate is? The prostate is a little O-ring muscle inside your butthole, okay? Inside there, that prostate wraps around your urinary tract. This muscle helps produce pre-ejaculate and it helps regulate your urinary tract system. Prostate cancer is linked to a lack of blood flow. Why? Because there's too many men that just can't touch their toes. There's too many men that can't do a lunge properly. There's too many men that don't squat. Open up your hips, open up your hamstrings, open up your quads. The only way you're going to do that, not by running. There's not enough range of motion in running. You got to get down to the floor. The only way to get down to the floor is through resistance exercise. Squats, lunges, jump squats, stretching. Those are all type 2 muscle fiber producers. And ultimately, that's the only way to longevity. Okay? All right. So today, your assignment, this is what I want you to do. I want you to look up and just Google, how do I lose fat? And I want you to pick the article that or the link that catches your eye. And I want you to write down 3 to 5 main points from that article or link. That's all you have to do, okay? And I put my in. 3 to 5 main points from that article and link. So when you're done with me right now, you're going to Google or Bing or whatever, how do I lose fat? Whatever article you see, whatever link you see, I want you to look it up because I want to see what is being sold at the top of the chain. In other words, I want to see how right and how spot on our Google searches are and what they're doing for us. Okay, so Google, how do I lose fat, or Bing or your search engine, whatever, your Microsoft search engine, look up, how do I lose fat? I want you to pick whatever article you pick, and I want you to write down 3 or 5 of the main points. Okay? All right. That's it for the day. Do you want the link as well? Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, include the link. Thank you. Thank you, Kimberly. Excellent point. Include the link. Absolutely. But start looking into it. Start demystifying some of the stuff. And that's all I got for today. Make sure you tune in on Wednesday, log into Canvas. Make sure you do your assignment, okay, on Wednesday. And then next week, we'll be talking about this more. Okay, have a good one, guys. Take care.